Welcome, everyone. The keynote discussion this evening is going to be Welcome Home. And I want to begin by introducing some of my colleagues. My colleagues and I will be sharing with you the work of the Mission Real Estate Task Force for the Diocese of San Diego. So let me start by introducing two members of that task force. The first is our faithful, insightful, and effervescent leader, Ms. Jessica Ripper. Jessica serves as chair of the Mission Real Estate Task Force, and her career is focused on housing, health, and human services. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be here. Nice to see so many of you who I know. And nice to meet new folks, too.
And the second is a man who masterfully combines pastoral presence and administrative acuity, the Reverend Canon Jeff Martinhauk. Jeff serves as our Chief Financial Officer, overseeing diocesan finances, human resources, and assisting congregations in these areas. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. And I don't know why you set the bar so high for me. I'll never reach all that stuff.
I just took it from your staff description on the webpage. So I guess you're going to have to talk to communications about that. And my name is Jason Evans. I serve as the Diocese as Canon for Mission, and I'm also a member of the Mission Real Estate Task Force. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. And just so you know, we have set aside time for Q&A. So friends, if you could hold your questions until then and keep yourself muted when you're not sharing, that would be really appreciated. And this way, everyone gets a chance to hear the party that's sharing at any point in our discussion. We wanted to begin this discussion by providing some background to you. This task force was initially launched in May of 2021 as the Affordable Housing Task Force. Its conception was based on the understanding that the church could play a role in helping the region meet the growing demand for homes at prices people can afford. Jessica and Jeff, along with Bishop Susan, participated in a conference with others across the Episcopal Church hosted by Trinity Wall Street in New York. And this conference established a consultative relationship with Trinity Wall Street that provided the team the opportunity to hear stories from churches across the states that were using previously underutilized real estate assets for a variety of purposes. In addition to housing, there were community spaces, gardens, small businesses, and more. It was through this partnership with Trinity Wall Street that we determined that this work was about more than just affordable housing. It was about participating in what God was doing in the neighborhoods we serve. When asked what the greatest command was, Jesus said it was to love God with every fiber of our being, but that the second greatest command was of equal importance, to care for neighbors in the same way we care for ourselves. As congregations discern how best to use their campuses in a spiritually fulfilling and financially sustainable manner, the process we will outline for you this evening is intended to help congregations weave into that discernment the care of our neighbors as well, just as Jesus commanded us. Over the past year, the task force worked in collaboration with Trinity Wall Street to establish a process for developing real estate for missional purposes that begins with dreaming about what is possible. We've now met with 5 congregations and are scheduled to meet with 3 more in the coming year to discuss some of these possibilities. Our interest is in helping congregations find a potential win-win, loving our neighbors, and when possible, generate revenue for parishes to live out their mission. Our hope is to advance an understanding of how faith communities can use their real estate to support their mission-related projects. Primarily, we do this by facilitating discernment processes that support decision-making in the parish and assist in identifying human and financial resources needed to fulfill a church's vision. This includes maintaining a list of people with subject matter expertise in real estate development and other key areas. As you can see here, our purpose aligns with a desired outcome of utilizing real estate to announce God's good news. We have found it helpful to explain how we do this through works of mercy, justice, and evangelism. Works of mercy entail acts that reflect God's compassion for all people. In such a possibility, we use our resources to provide relief to others from the pain of a broken world. This might be a food pantry or a soup kitchen. Works of justice reflect God's dream for a redeemed world where all are treated equitably. In such an opportunity, we use our resources to perpetuate a more just world in the neighborhood we operate within. This might look like planting trees in response to global warming, provide affordable housing so that more neighbors have a sense of stability and belonging, or maybe incubating a small business. Works of evangelism are those that announce and declare God's good news for redemption and reconciliation. In these instances, we use our physical resources to create communities where God's love is shared with those that are not yet a part of God's church. This might look like planting a new church or leveraging our physical assets to ensure an established church's legacy can continue in perpetuity. The emphasis, as we see it, is on sharing the good news of God's love through our words, our actions, and leveraging our resources, no matter how meager or grand, for God's good news. When it comes to the physical assets of a congregation, this can be done, as we have learned, in as many ways as there are congregations. So I'm going to stop here and turn it over to Jessica, and she'll share some examples and explain the process that we have begun to use with congregations. Jessica?
Great. Thank you, Jason. Just double checking. Can everyone hear me? Great. So there are a couple of places that I just want to highlight. And so to be thinking about how we can use our real estate assets to fulfill that call to mercy, justice, and evangelism. And, another way to think about that is really the specific opportunities and impact areas where we can contribute to community health and well-being. And so one of those areas, and you can see the picture in the upper right, is around early childhood development and education. Faith institutions have been involved in that for a long time, from preschools, et cetera. This picture here is actually maybe familiar to folks. It demonstrates or highlights the relationship we already have with St. John's Episcopal Church in Chula Vista and Episcopal Community Services. And it's basically, for those who aren't as familiar, the site originally housed an Episcopal day school, which closed in 2017. But the Episcopal Community Services is one of the large Head Start providers in the region. So in 2018, Episcopal Community Services in here leased the facility for use as one of the main Head Start campuses in the South Bay region of San Diego. And then and for those of you who might not be, as involved or not have young children, Head Start is the federally funded program that provides high quality educational experiences to young children. So it's an opportunity to weave together early childhood learning and family support. And, they do a whole range of activities and provide a whole range of supports, including food distribution. And so that's one way in which, a faith community might consider engaging. The other place, many of you I know that, because based on the faces that I see here, are maybe familiar with St. Luke's North Park. Which, in addition to serving as a place of worship and a cultural center for Sudanese and Congolese refugees, it's also a home base for local nonprofits that are providing social services and employment opportunities. I actually can see it right from my window. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the work St. Luke's is doing. First of all, RefugeeNet, with their long history of assisting refugees who have escaped war or persecution, and really helping folks adapt to a new culture and finding ways to support themselves and their families. And so this is through like tutoring and academic support, distributing nutritious food to families with limited incomes. And I will admit, and for those of you who've had a chance to share in this, one of my personal favorites is Mama Africa Catering, which serves really delicious Pan-African cuisine prepared by former refugee women. And if you haven't tried it, you definitely should. St. Luke's is also home to Make Projects, which is an employment social enterprise. So that might be another area that, if you're thinking about how to live into mission, and that really, the word make in that stands for merging agriculture, kitchens, and employment. So they do urban farm partnerships. They offer farm share bags for purchase. They also offer a culinary training program and run a cafe in the community garden. And you'll find a common theme with me, for those of you who don't know me, is that I like to eat, also quite amazing. And then the other place, the other work that is done at St. Luke's is the Uptown Community Services Center, which serves an estimated 2,000 people a year who are living on limited incomes, and including some of the RefugeeNet families. But also serving folks who are unhoused with food distribution, a place to receive mail, so that they can receive like essential mail, clothing and hygiene items and referrals to other areas. So, and that service center is actually supported by a partnership with many other churches, so many and individual volunteers. And I know folks on this call are involved in that as well. And then a third way that congregations can fulfill our call to mercy, justice, and evangelism is the picture in the lower left. Sorry, I'm kind of turning myself around here. And, one of those, and that is really through making land available to create homes that people of lower and moderate incomes can afford. And one of the reasons, we're really seeing this trend on the rise as more and more people in our communities navigate the challenges of high housing costs relative to wages, especially an issue for people living on fixed incomes. So many of our seniors are folks with disabilities. And so going back to that Gift of Place conference that Jason was just talking about that was hosted by Trinity Wall Street, one of the things that we learned and heard was kind of the discernment process that so many of these, some of these faith communities were using to figure out how do we live out our mission. And so this picture is of a different St. Luke's. It's actually St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Seattle, Washington. And they have the picture that you see there is the plan to develop homes that are on 3 lots that currently include 2 cottages and a church garden. So the picture there is the drawing of the results of that visioning process. They've now entered into a partnership with an affordable housing developer and a market rate developer who are working together to develop approximately 280 new homes, some which are affordable to families earning at or below 60% of the median income, and some which are going to be at market rate. And the important thing about that is that it represents the first homes that are affordable in that neighborhood in decades. And so the end result is going to be two integrated but separate buildings. They also have ground level space for a new church. And I think if you heard the presentation that we heard and the excitement about envisioning that new church space and like how the community, how the congregation came to that, it was truly inspiring. And then of course, it also includes parking. And so and I think the important thing to know is, that project is at a very, large scale. And they receive funding from a variety of sources, including the city of Seattle. There are a wide array of examples of churches that are taking similar steps at different scales. Some of them are for accessory dwelling units, some of them are larger multifamily developments, and it really is based on both the vision of the congregation as well as the need of the needs of the community. And so those were really some of our takeaways and the types of things that we heard. And we heard a whole other range of ideas as well about what how the space could be used. One of the other important things to be thinking about too, I think, and this is especially in areas that are high cost, is the opportunities for things like housing for clergy, housing for workforce. We're seeing we're seeing like teachers and folks like that who folks in those types of jobs who really aren't able to continue to live in the community. So that's one other option. And so I wanted to take us back to based on what we heard and based on what we learned from Trinity Wall Street, the process that we've been working on and wanted to make people aware of in terms of how we can provide support to you and through each other. So this process that is up on the screen now is based on that one developed by Trinity Wall Street, and theirs is like a grid and it's got all kinds of information on it, but it's not really designed to be accessible to people who aren't real estate developers per se. And so, and the other piece of it is that it really left out some of the initial phases of dreaming and discerning, which we heard were so important to the community process. And so when we went to craft something for the work that we're doing and what we were learning, this process of getting is really starts with getting started, right? Like we're really trying to start at the beginning and help people understand, or or work with the congregation to understand the congregation's interests, their need for support. And so things like that in this getting started phase, and you'll see the 6 phases here, and I'll talk through each of them. There's the getting started workshop, and it had, there's a preliminary timeline for, different types of projects, will take different amounts of time and have different levels of complexity. And then also some questions to help launch a team staffing plan. And then the diocesan, and the end goal is that the diocesan church leaders have a shared understanding of, what we mean when we say a missional approach to real estate development. And then the second phase is the dreaming phase, which is really, that opportunity for, for the church's leadership and the congregation to explore their aspirations, about what could be, and how you could use, you could use your real estate assets to, further your mission and, support, and help to support and address the concerns and hopes of the surrounding community. So things like gathering data and stories through listening sessions, conducting surveys, reviewing church records of just, past relationships with the neighborhood and community. And, this is, one of those processes where, every church is different in terms of its relationship with the community. So really like diving deep and really understanding, understanding what the community needs are. So other things like demographic studies and informational interviews, and really being an active presence in the neighborhood. And so the idea at the end of this phase would be that the congregation has a list of, its interests, and then it also has a deep understanding of community priorities as well, so that you can begin to look at how those things align. And that's where the discernment process kicks in. It's really the beginning to research the ideas and identify the ones that are really the most feasible, and that the congregation, at the end will have narrowed that list to maybe 2 or 3 potential uses of the available of the property. And then, of course, it's really important to be really clear about making a decision. And I think that's one of the things that we heard in this process, the deciding phase, that, being clear about that decision-making process and understanding, recognizing there's going to be some back and forth, but really being clear about what the decision is and what the outcome, what you want the outcome to be. So the idea, the focus here is really, understanding both commitments and, understanding cost estimates and so that you can make a decision whether or not to go forward with a particular project. And though, while at the same time, thinking through how you're, managing the project through to completion. So the idea in this phase is really, keeping the congregation and surrounding community informed throughout that decision-making process. The development phase, and as I said, this is going to be different. Like, to develop a community garden is very different than, building an affordable housing development. And there's a whole host of, opportunities in between. But the idea, the focus of the development stage is just that. It's, you're developing the project, whatever it is, you're executing on that vision to align with congregational and community priorities and in a way that contributes to shared well-being. And then the last phase is the deliver phase, because, I think oftentimes, one of the things that we heard in conversations that I've had in different communities, that you hear that, the deliver phase, it's like, how do you keep the project going over time? So, whether it's a garden or whatever the project may be, but understanding the impact of the project, understanding, whether or not it's feasible, and making and being prepared to adapt to the changes that'll keep it sustainable. And so that's a kind of quick overview of the process. I think Jason's going to walk us through a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, let's take a moment just to take a little bit of a closer look at some of the phases, the initial phases that Jessica was just talking about. On the getting started phase, this really is a congregation that's starting the discernment process and considering what missional possibilities with their real estate could be. This essentially is, as Jessica talked about, a congregational meeting so that you have the opportunity to gather the history, the interest, and the passions of a congregation as it relates to your property. We all know that somebody in the congregation remembers some successful or failed a real estate project that was at least entertained in the past. And you want to be able to make sure that you have a venue in which this information can be collected. So this ensures that everyone feels as if they have been heard and have been included in the process. Additionally, we suggest sharing the whole process with the congregation at this meeting to establish expectations. Make sure there is a shared understanding of what lies ahead and how long this entire project might take, because it always is the case that somebody wonders why it's taking so long. So if we can establish expectations and make sure everybody is clear on how this might go, people will understand why certain phases of the project are going to take longer than others, depending on the scale and scope of what it is that you discern to do together. If this isn't something that your congregation in particular feels like you can do on your own, the task force members are ready to come and assist in facilitating this meeting. After which point we would want to do a check-in, see how things are going, what you've been able to collect, and then begin to talk about the next phase, which would be the dream phase. In this next phase, as Jessica was sharing, you're going to be using demographic studies, information interviews, and having an active presence in the community so that you can begin to familiarize yourself with the concerns and the possibilities in the surrounding community so that you can match what the community needs with the gifts of the congregation. The diocese is now providing a variety of resources around this to assist you at this stage, including training and coaching from our community engagement missioner. You'll want to map out the area around your church's campus, and we've provided information or a tool for doing this through a tool called Mission Insight, and it's free to all of our congregations. But after determining the area you intend to engage, you're going to want to schedule things like walks or drives through the community, going out in pairs to pray for the community, and collecting as much information as you can about the social and physical landscape so that you can begin to discern what might be possible in partnership with your neighborhood. And as you go about the community, you'll want to speak with as many individuals as you can, being curious about what your community members celebrate and are concerned about. You may also want to invite community members and stakeholders to your campus, provide them a tour of your facilities, and ask how they think your facilities might best serve the needs of the surrounding community. The outcome of this stage of the process will be that the congregation will have a list of both congregational and community priorities. Your congregation has gifts to offer, but it also has needs. It may have physical space, but needs financial resources in order to maintain it. And this phase of the process helps you determine possibilities for how your gifts might be paired with the gifts of your neighbors, so that however you move forward, it's sustainable for all. As simple as these first two stages are, they are often the most difficult to initiate in our experience. So we're doing our best to walk alongside congregations at each of these particular stages, recognizing that they will provide you the momentum necessary to head into the more decisive phases of figuring out where your focus will lie. As we said before, this process is intended to assist your congregation in determining how you use your physical resources in a manner that allows the congregation to thrive while integrating into the well-being of the entire community. So let's stop there for a moment and see, are there any questions that we can answer at this point or comments that you'd like to make?